Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Sugar Mama's Fireplay podcast. I am Canna Campbell. Today's podcast is the second part of the two-part series, Chatting with Sharon. The podcast that is a big wake-up call and a reminder that it is never too late to start working on your financial well-being. As I mentioned last week, we are chatting with Sharon. And in my original podcast, I actually thought Sharon was in her early 50s. Actually, she's mid-50s. And since connecting with us about 18 months to 2 years ago, she's gone on to achieve even more financial success as she works on her own financial well-being through a financial strategy based on education, information, knowledge, empowerment, and dedication. So as you listen to Sharon share how her story continues on, a quick reminder that this is not personal advice, product advice, or strategic advice. This is her journey, her story. So if you hear something you think, oh, I wonder if I should be doing this, please go and talk to a financial planner and get personal advice. Sharon, thank you so much for reconnecting with me and everyone else and continuing to inspire people to take their financial well-being seriously. It is so important. It's as important as eating the right foods and getting a right balance of vitamins and minerals and nutrients. How do you now feel about financial well-being 2 years into your journey?
Thank you, Anna. Look, it's a pleasure to be back on the podcast again. Over the last 2 years, I don't think I've missed an episode. And I also want to thank you personally for taking the time away from your family to record these podcasts that help us all in one way or another.
It's my pleasure.
Look, basically, from when we spoke on the last podcast 18 months ago, I have continued to put extra into my super. We did, in fact, purchase another investment property. I know when we spoke last, we had 2, and we now have 3. I've also purchased more shares. And look, with COVID, normally I would travel overseas probably, hopefully, once a year. So not being able to travel as much as we've done, I've really channeled my money into those 3 areas of my life to make life a lot easier. I know I spoke certainly about having the choice of when I wanted to retire, and just by continuing on the way that I was, it's really cemented that choice as mine.
So retirement is in the foreseeable future, is that correct?
That's correct. As you say, now I'm 57. I was looking at working for another 3 years, no problem at all, and then maybe looking and thinking, okay, what do I want to do now? With COVID last year, unfortunately, I lost both my mother, my mother-in-law, and a very dear family friend, all within a very short period of time. So
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. When that happens, you stop and you really take stock of what's important in your life, and of course, what is important is family.
Yeah.
So after that happened, we did nothing for about 6 months, but I felt really unsettled. Things were still continuing on well with the rentals, our super and everything else. But I know I was speaking to my boss at work. We were having a little get together. One of the ladies had retired, and he said, I'm currently 48. He says, I'm going to retire at 57. He said, that's my plan when I feel that I have enough money. And I said to him, well, I have enough now. And he just looked at me and he said, well, why are you here? Like, he didn't mean it in a nasty way or anything like that.
Of course not.
He just said, why are you here? And I had no answer. I had no answer to that. And I thought, well, he's right. Why am I still here? So, everybody's money amount is different, of course.
Yes.
What's your money amount is very different from mine. You live in Sydney, I live in rural New South Wales. So very different amounts, I'm sure. But by chance that week, we were actually meeting with our accountant as well. So we went off to the accountant, and we were actually even more ahead than what we thought we were. So I spoke to my husband that night, and the very next day I went into my boss and I said, we've been to the accountant, and I said, and what you said last week has really resonated with me. Why am I still here? And he said, oh, are you retiring? I said, no, I won't retire completely, but I would like to go to 2 days per week.
Heaven.
Look, I've been working full time now, I don't know, 30 years. I don't know, I can't remember. But I thought, well, for 2 days, living on a farm, it still gives me some social interaction. And I've been with this company now for 19 years. So I've worked with the same people, mostly for 19 years. So I wasn't quite prepared to give up that interaction with my work family.
Of course. And also, I really think it's healthy to have that intellectual stimulation, to, I guess, keep that brain working as a muscle, of course, and that community engagement. And you don't have to work for money, but you have that choice to work on the terms that you want. And that extra money can be extra spending money, or it could be extra money for savings, or extra money for travel, or extra money for investing. It's completely up to you, and you are completely in control and totally empowered.
Yes, and I mean, that was what I was always working for. I know one of the questions you asked me on a previous podcast was, what is it that you want the most? And for me, the answer was the power to decide when I wanted to retire. From what I've just said about what happened in my life last year, I was in the very fortunate situation that I could bring it forward by nearly 3 years, my retirement strategy. My boss was okay with that. He was happy. I have given them 6 months before I'll start going to the 2 days to give them time to find somebody. I do have a specialist role, so to find somebody to train them. And then hopefully, look, I don't know how long I'll do 2 days for. I might do it for 6 months. I might do it, for another 3 or 4 years. I don't know, but at least I have that choice.
Absolutely. And it's so incredibly important to have that luxury in life. Now, if I think about when we first spoke, or when you first, I guess, came across the $1,000 project, how do you now feel about your financial future if you look back from what you've achieved over the last, say, 2.5 years?
Well, I know after speaking to our accountant, we were driving home, my husband was driving, and I was sitting there and I thought to myself, we did it. I became quite emotional. I had to choke back the tears because I thought, all this hard work, we've done it. Both my husband and I were born in the 60s. My husband's one of 8 children living on a farm. Wow. I was one of 4 children with divorced parents. So extra money was not an option. We certainly had food on the table, clothes on our backs, but there was never any spare money, so to speak. And look, I remember when we were married in the early 80s, we had $5,000 between us. And honestly, I thought we were rich. To have $5,000, I thought, wow, this is unbelievable. Because look, we simply had no money growing up. So to get to the stage where we wanted to be, we put in the hard work. Yeah, it was a very emotional and a very confronting moment for me.
Absolutely, of course. A lot of people I find that have grown up in poverty use that almost as an excuse to hold them back from achieving their financial goals and dreams. They almost use it as a form of self-sabotaging. And you, as someone you and your husband have grown up in poverty where money's been tight and you haven't had the luxuries that you've had today. How have you confronted that mindset, or confronted that fear even, to not just rewrite history and live in your upbringing? How have you done things differently to your parents?
Look, I think when you grow up without a lot of money, you can go 2 ways. You can either be a person that respects money, like my husband and I do, or you can be the person that is just lives from paycheck to paycheck, just spends it nonstop. Fortunately, neither of us like that. And look, also too, with us personally, and for me especially, about the same time, about that age 50 mark, I really embraced minimalism.
Yeah.
And as I know you do. So when you stop and you realise that your possessions are just possessions, you don't need to have the latest and greatest. So for us, we were able to obtain more and more money and put that to where we needed it to be.
And it's interesting you talk about the restrictions, the travel restrictions, which we've all faced, not being able to go on overseas holidays or even, domestic holidays for a lot of us, and how that's allowed you to have a lot of extra cash that you've been able to put towards your own financial goals. I can't tell you the amount of people that have gone out and the money that they would have spent on travel, they've just gone and blown on stuff, clothing,
Exactly.
accessories, gadgets for the home, all that opportunity to save money and work on some other sort of area in your overall financial well-being just gets evaporated. And the difference with you is you've proactively put, say, for example, that $10,000 that you would have used for airfares and accommodation overseas, you've been able to put that, say, towards more shares or more super or whatever it is you may have done. Being able to proactively take control is so incredibly valuable. And if you don't do that, money just vanishes, it evaporates into thin air. And I think that's why it's been obviously very, very helpful. You use COVID as a blessing in disguise to strengthen your financial situation.
Yes, and also I'll give you an example. Like we decided here at home to buy the new sofa.
Yeah.
So we went into Plush, which is where I like to buy my sofas for, good quality. And the one we had a budget of $2,000. So we went into Plush, and of course the one that I liked was $4,000. So rather than coming home and being totally dejected, I knew that Plush twice a year have a 50% sale. Ooh. So if I was willing to wait 3 months to see if this particular sofa was on special, then I could save 50%. So when the time came, we went in and sure enough, it was 50% off.
Great.
And we thought, oh, this is great. So there's $2,000 saved immediately. On that particular day, they were also offering another 5% off if you signed up on the day. And also too, when you order a lounge, you get to choose the fabric. The fabric I chose was mid-grade, whereas the one that was on the display model was high grade. So that has saved us even more money. So simply by the fact that we waited for 3 months, that lounge, which would have cost us $4,000, only cost us $1,300 in the end.
Wow.
plus the $100 that I sold the couch that we did have for. So roughly about $1,200 because I waited 3 months.
And what did you do with those savings?
Those savings, basically, we put it towards more shares. During COVID, if you look, I do watch my shares every day. I know they say, you shouldn't, but I do because that way I know what's a consistent performer. I did, in fact, and I didn't think I'd ever do this, but I did, in fact, sell one lot of shares because over the last 5 years, they were just breaking even, or sometimes they were in the negative. So I knew they weren't a consistently high performer. So I did sell most of those shares. And then I took that money and then I bought the shares, some more of the shares that I knew that were always consistently up there.
So you rebalanced your share portfolio.
That's it. Yes.
Now, obviously, we've experienced huge amounts of market volatility over the last 6 months. How do you feel as someone who is about to enter retirement and is about to start living off their passive income, their mindful money number? How do you feel about market volatility? What's your attitude and approach?
Look, it doesn't bother me. When you do your research, it doesn't matter what happens on the GFC, everything crashed, but always it comes back. So I actually get excited when I see things crash a little bit because I go and I usually buy more. Fortunately for me.
Oh, my face. I'm the same. I'm like, oh, shopping time. Like.
Yes, exactly. Because I think you had the analogy that, when you go to the supermarket, you buy things that are on special, you stock up. And that's exactly how I treat my shares. So, and I guess for us too, it's not just shares for myself. As I say, I have my super, which obviously I can't access till 60. That's fine. That's ticking along in the background. I have my shares. And we also have those 3 investment properties that we spoke of earlier.
How did you manage to squeeze another investment property purchase since we last spoke 18 months ago? Was that on the radar? I can't remember.
In my mind, I always wanted 3. And as I said in the initial podcast, if it happened, it did. But if not, I was happy with the 2. because my thought was when the time came that I wanted to retire, I had choice. I had a choice of either I could sell all three for the money, I could keep all three and have the rental income, or I could perhaps sell one and pay out the mortgages on the other two and be mortgage free.
Wow. So you're going to be living off 100% cash flow positive rental income from your investment properties plus dividend income from your share portfolio.
That's right. So what we've decided to do is, and it has gone on the market just last week, we have decided to sell one of the properties, and we did get an offer within 24 hours.
Wow.
And that offer will actually pay out that mortgage, the other two mortgages, our capital gains, our real estate agent fees, our solicitor fees, and also have a little bit left over for us. So we'll be mortgage free completely.
You have done so well over such a short period of time. Do you ever stop and think, where would I be? What would my life look like if I hadn't taken action for my financial well-being?
I certainly wouldn't have had the choice to retire earlier than what I first planned. We wouldn't have the investment properties. Yes, I'd have my super, but to be honest, I really hadn't paid a lot of detail to my super. To me, it was just something that happened in the background. So I think for me to be able to live the life I would like to live going forward, going overseas, perhaps maybe every 2 years, being able to look after my grandchildren and just living the life that I want to lead, I don't think I would have had that opportunity.
Thank goodness you did something.
Oh, very much. And look, as I said back then, reading your books, listening to your podcast, I was so thrilled when you started a podcast because I've watched you on YouTube. I think I've listened to all of your podcasts, and I've even recently gone back and started listening to again, just to pick up little details that you might have missed, that might not have been current to your situation at the time, but now they are. So it's always good to go back and listen again.
Now, I've got 2 questions for you before we wrap up, and these are probably long questions. The first one is how do you manage your cash flow? Because obviously you and your husband live within your means, because that's how you've been able to have spare money to buy shares and have spare money to put into a savings account to eventually put another deposit on another property. What are the logistics behind your cash flow? Do you have a budget? Do you have separate savings accounts? Do you factor your goals into your budget? Like, how have you actually made this happen?
Well, we've never had a budget. Very fortunately for us, as I say, we're both on the same page with money. Neither of us are frivolous spenders. We do live on a farm, so the farm account is kept separate to what I earn. For example, we would use my money that I bring in to buy groceries, go on holidays, clothes, things like that. And the farm was pretty much looking after itself. We've owned the farm for quite some time now, 22 odd years, and there was nearly 10 years when we were in drought. So to be able to have that as a separate account and know that our savings that I could bring in was separate, that was a catalyst for us to be able to get through that drought at the time.
Diversification is so incredibly important, particularly as farmers, because obviously the risk that you guys carry on your shoulders is huge and the reward is so small when you look at a lot of the numbers for a lot of the farmers doing it tough. And I think it's so incredibly important for farmers and also for most business owners is to not put all your eggs in one basket, not just rely on the business success, actually make sure that you use that success to your advantage and use that. If there is a profit, it's distributed, obviously through the tax system, but then that's money is then used to maybe diversify and invest in other assets that can grow in value over time along with your business or along with your farm, so that you're never solely reliant on sort of one asset class. And particularly, as you said, for you, 10 years of drought would have just been like heartbreaking as well.
And it was, and my husband grew up on the family farm. So he did diversify. He has cropping and he has sheep. He's not a cattle man, so we had the two. So, and basically when you've been in the farming game for long enough, usually when one's up, the other's down.
Yeah.
And also too, luckily for us, the government does have what we call farm management deposits. So when you do have a good year, you are able to put money into those farm management deposits, so that when you do have a bad year, you can draw that money back. So that's been a great benefit to us as well.
And very similar to for someone who myself, I'm not obviously a farmer, but emergency money, if you're having a have something goes wrong and things don't go to plan, you've got that emergency money to fall back on to draw out as an income, a replacement income, or to help fix an expense in your life that's come up. It's important to obviously be practical and real as to the risks and responsibilities that we all carry on our shoulders, so that it doesn't ever jeopardize our financial well-being. And the final question I have for you is your superannuation. As you mentioned before you read my book, you just neglected your super, as you said. Literally, it was something that just goes on in the background. You've since engaged with your super. You've made sure that it's consolidated. You've made sure that it is invested and aligned to your risk profile. You've explored and researched and made sure you understand all the different, contribution types and the rules and regulations, and obviously the pros and cons, and the changing caps. How do you feel now about how important superannuation is for your financial well-being? Is it still in the background, or is it paramount to your success and well-being?
Oh, definitely very paramount. It's one of the diversifications. So we really still, over these past few years, while farming's been good, while I have been working full time, we've put in as much as we possibly can into our super. My husband can access his super now. He's just a couple of years older than myself, but we haven't touched it. So once again, it's just that emergency money that's there in the background, that's clicking over. At my age, I should have been now on the bottom level, I believe, the safe level. But because we do have other diversification, I'm happy staying upward and having a bit of risk, and knowing that even though at the moment with shares going up and down, obviously my super dropped, but I'm not worried about that at all. Not at all.
I think it's incredibly important to know and understand your risk profile, but I do feel that there is a misconception or a poor level of communication, or perhaps a outdated advice that when you reach retirement, that you should park everything in cash. Now, if we go back, say, 20, 30 years, where, the average man retired at 65 and their life expectancy was 70, maybe 75 if they were lucky, they didn't have that benefit of time that we have today. Today, the average person retires at age 65 and the life expectancy is up around 85 or a bit more, I believe, for women. So your retirement is still, if you retired at 65, which obviously it's not, it's much, much sooner than that. But, the average person's retirement is 20 years, which is still considered a very long time when it comes to risk profiles. So I refer to long-term investing as 10 years or more. But if you jump on, say, the Money Smart website by ASIC, or you speak to most financial planners, they actually consider long-term investing 7 years or longer. So people do need to realize that if your money to be able to either outlive you or keep up with inflation, it is important to make sure that you do have an element of growth assets still in your investment portfolio or superannuation portfolio, so it can provide that long-term growth, albeit with a short to medium or even some long-term market volatility. But it's incredibly important that we don't, follow the old prescription necessarily of retiring and literally parking everything in a term deposit and going fishing, and because my biggest fear is that a lot of Australians will actually run out of money. So it's great that you understand what your risk profile is. You're very comfortable with market volatility, and making sure that you keep your eye on your income stream rather than the actual value of the portfolio. If I look at the stats for women, and in particular single women, it's something like 40% of women today who are single will retire in immense poverty. They won't be able to afford the basics, which is frightening. So for any woman who's listening to this today, single or with a partner, what is your advice to them right now as they listen to your story and listen to what you have achieved over the last couple of years?
That it's never too late. I guess that's why I approached you first off when we first did our podcast. As I say, I was 50 then. And that's when I started to take notes. So look, if I could tell myself, my younger self in my 20s, what's important in life, then certainly, pay attention to your super. Start buying some shares. You could do it with as little as $1,000. Yeah. Just really take stock of your financial well-being, because honestly, if you had have said, that the next 30 years will go in a blink of an eye, I would have laughed at you, but they really do.
Yeah.
It really does go so quickly. So now I'm at the stage where, because I did take stock only 7 years ago, that I'm fortunate enough now that I can retire early.
And when you put your head, heart, and mind to it, with, as I said, education, dedication, knowledge, look at what you've done for yourself. You've really made things happen.
Yes.
Do you ever look back and go, wow?
Oh, yes, all the time. I look back and I think, wow, I've done it. We've done it together. We've got to this stage where, as I say, losing close family members, it really makes you know what's important in life. It's not your possessions. And look, don't get me wrong. You need to have money to survive in the world, but just to know your limitations and to be able to spend more time with my husband, more time with my grandchildren, that is now what's more important to me than having, the latest and greatest of any possession.
Yeah. Family and health and
Definitely.
connection, that's the richness in life.
Yes.
Well, I have to say, your accountant must be incredibly proud of you and your husband. You're a great success story. You have worked incredibly hard, and you deserve all the fruits of what you've been working on. And I'm honored and touched that you are sharing this story with me and with everyone who's listening to this, because I really believe it. When people share, they ignite incredibly powerful changes and shifts and breakthroughs for people, and they start to realize how powerful and how capable they really are.
Yes, look, even if they just take one little thing and just make a start today, then that's all that I can ask for. So it's just been wonderful.
And when you take that one start, it evolves, doesn't it? It doesn't ever stop. When you go, oh, wow, I just paid off that credit card, or, oh, wow, my savings account hit this. You don't stop. It's addictive.
No, gosh, it's addictive. I think my husband's, becoming a bit worried that, because, I being minimalist, I've decluttered the house, and I think he's getting a bit worried that, soon he won't have a bed to sleep on or a table to sit at. But and that's the extreme, of course. But it's very addictive.
It's funny you say that. Over the weekend, we're renovating a part of our house, and I had to get the wardrobes taken out. And I was going to have to pay for someone to come and take them out, and I was going to have to pay for a skip. And I thought, you know what? I'm not paying that. So I put the wardrobes on Gumtree and said, yes, come over. They're for free. You can dismantle them yourself, but they're free. You've just got to come and dismantle them yourself. And I did it. I got the wardrobes out. We didn't have to pay for a skip. I think I saved us about $1,000. And it wasn't without drama, because our kids were sick on the weekend. It was pouring with rain, and there were all sorts of debacles and dramas with trying to get these wardrobes out of the house. But we got there and we did it. And, Tom said, obviously, God bless you for being so careful with money and trying to be so creative in saving money. But I did make a little bit of a headache for myself. But you know what? It was so worth it. There's lots of things you can do to save money and to grow money and to hustle money. So
and also too, by destroying those wardrobes, you're creating more into landfill, as you say, with the skip. Whereas now it's gone to somebody who could genuinely use them for whatever reason. They might not have been financial enough to buy new ones. So to be able to recycle things in our economy is another wonderful way.
Exactly. It is incredibly important. And that's why I gave them away. It wasn't about the money. It was reducing landfill and giving someone an opportunity. A couple of them went to a builder who was starting out. And the other ones went to a lovely couple that turned up that needed them. So it felt good. But yeah, I think Tom at the time was wondering, because there were lots of dramas with this. I was wondering what have you got yourself into, Canna? But all in the name of saving money. But look, Sharon, thank you so much for coming on to today's podcast. Your wisdom, your advice, your insight, and your absolute transparency is inspiring. And, even myself, as I listen to you, I'm like, I just want to re-engage with my superannuation. I want to, look at my passive income streams, and I want to look at my retirement goals. And just like you, I want a part-time retirement. I don't want to completely stop work, because I love exercising my brain. I love that the, social interaction, but I love the balance. But I would, like you, I would love more time. I'd love more time for my family. I'd love more time for my friends. I'd love more time, just to work on my own health and fitness and well-being. So, I'm sitting on my hands because I'm actually jumping out of my seat with so much inspiration. So thank you so much.
Pleasure, Priyanka. Pleasure.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Can I ask a huge favor? Can you help trigger a shift, a breakthrough, a transformation for more people in this world to really embrace their financial well-being, to realize that it's never too late to start working on your financial well-being. And it really is incredible what you can actually achieve with just a few simple things. As Sharon said, you just need to start. All right, everyone, don't forget to make sure you're following me on Instagram at Sugar Mama TV so you're always up to date and connected with what we are doing. And I will see you next Monday for more financial education, inspiration, and motivation on Sugar Mama's Fireplay podcast. Ciao for now.